When we speak of heaven's appointment, we are not merely trading on the edges of poetic fancy, but entering into the living mystery that whispers through every chamber of the soul. The quiet certainty that there are moments when the ordinary is pierced by a light not our own, when the mundane is interrupted by a hand unseen, and when we sense, though we cannot chart or measure it, that a pattern has been written in which our names, our faces, and our very hours are not accidents of dust, but appointments drawn out of eternity. To be chosen is to live under this astonishing declaration, that your existence is not a loose pebble in the stream of time, but a jewel set by intention, an arrow sent with aim, a note in the great music that could not be struck by any other instrument without distorting the harmony. It is a wonder so immense that if we let it flood our hearts even for a moment, we would find ourselves trembling not with fear, but with that deeper trembling which is awe, the trembling of one who has brushed against the eternal and knows that nothing can ever again be called small or wasted or meaningless. Yet the mystery of being chosen is often concealed from us in the very folds of the commonplace. We imagine that divine appointment must come with trumpets and earthquakes, but in truth it comes with the quiet weight of a look, a word, a crossing of paths that seems on the surface so incidental and yet in retrospect glows with the gold of inevitability. How many times have we walked into a room, sat at a table, or lingered at the turn of a road, and only later realized that heaven had already gone before us, arranging not only the place, but the very pulse of our hearts to be open at that instant. And so, the chosen are not always clothed in the garments of grandeur. They come to us in simplicity, often unaware of their own appointed role, like messengers carrying letters they have never read, unaware of the contents but faithful in delivering them by their very presence. This mystery deepens when we realize that heaven's choice is never random, never a lottery of souls tossed in chance, but a deliberate weaving. One thread is sent to meet another, not for the sake of one alone, but for the tapestry of the whole. And so to be chosen is to discover that your story is not merely your own, that your steps are not only for your journey, but for another's as well, that you may be sent to carry a word, to bear a burden, or to be the quiet answer to a prayer you never heard spoken. This is the astonishing tenderness of divine design, that a life may be appointed not only for its own salvation, but as the light to another's path, that heaven would so trust fragile humanity as to deliver itself through one to another. But let us not imagine that to be chosen is to be lifted onto a pedestal of pride, as though it were a medal for virtue earned. No. The chosen are often the least expecting, the least prepared, the most aware of their own frailty. Indeed, the weight of chosenness presses hardest upon those who know their weakness, for they are constantly haunted by the question, why me? Why should I be sent when there are others more worthy, more skilled, more deserving? And yet this very question is the seal of authenticity, for it shows that heaven's choice rests not on human measure but on grace. The chosen are not selected because they are mighty, but because heaven delights in confounding the mighty with the weak, the learned with the simple, the proud with the humble, so that the source of the gift may never be mistaken as their own. And what, then, does it mean for heaven to send you to another chosen one? It means that your appointment is not solitary but reciprocal, that you are not only sent but also received, that heaven's design is to bind two lives into a bond that neither foresaw, and to make of that meeting a testimony that eternity is nearer than we thought. To be chosen for another is to be a living letter, written in invisible ink, unfolded in the presence of the one to whom it was addressed long before you were born. There is mystery here, a mystery so profound that it cannot be fully spoken without diminishing it, and yet it must be spoken. For to be silent about it is to let the wonder wither. Consider how often in the stories of old, the heroes were not lone wanderers, but companions set together, each chosen in their own right, yet appointed for one another. David had Jonathan, Moses had Aaron, Ruth had Naomi, Paul had Timothy. These were not accidents of history, but orchestrations of heaven, each life an answer to the other's need. And if such patterns appear in ancient tales, why should they not still be true in ours? For the author of time has not grown weary, nor has he ceased weaving lives into one another's destiny. When we are sent to another chosen one, it is as though heaven is doubling the light, strengthening the flame, and making of two candles a blaze that can withstand winds which would extinguish either one alone. Yet the wonder of being chosen is always shadowed by mystery, for we do not see the whole design. Often we see only fragments, a conversation that lingers in memory, a hand extended in kindness, a silence shared that was more eloquent than speech. These fragments may not reveal their meaning until years later, and even then perhaps only in part. This is the discipline of trust, the invitation to walk without knowing the full reason. The assurance that to be chosen is not to be given a map, but to be given a companion. Not to be shown the destination, but to be assured that the road is not walked in vain. And so the mystery of heaven's appointment is not a puzzle to be solved, but a wonder to be lived, a reality that asks not for comprehension, but for faith, not for mastery, but for surrender. To be chosen is therefore both a comfort and a challenge. It comforts us because it assures us that we are not forgotten, not overlooked, not random sparks in a void. But it challenges us because it lays upon us the responsibility of faithfulness, the quiet courage of living as though every step, every word, every act might be the very instrument through which heaven answers another's cry. It is a call to attentiveness, to live not sleepwalking through days, but awake to the holy interruptions, awake to the stranger who is no stranger, awake to the chance encounter that is no chance at all. And in this attentiveness we find not only purpose, but a deep and trembling joy. For we realize that our smallness has been caught up into a greatness beyond measure. Thus the mystery of heaven's appointment and the wonder of being chosen is not a doctrine to be recited, but a reality to be lived, a truth that breathes in every moment when we pause to see that our lives are not merely ours, that our steps are guided by hands unseen, that our days are written with more care than any human author could devise, and that in the end to be chosen is simply to discover that we are loved with a love that does not let us drift, but anchors us, a love that not only embraces us but sends us, a love that trusts us with the weight of eternity, carried in the fragile vessel of our humanity. When heaven appoints a soul to be sent, it is never a matter of decoration or idle play, but of solemn trust. For to be given to another as a gift is to carry the weight of responsibility that exceeds mere companionship or fleeting usefulness. It is to walk beneath a commission, often invisible to others, sometimes barely comprehended by oneself, but nevertheless real and heavy and demanding. The one who is chosen becomes more than an individual pursuing private aims. They become a vessel, a bearer of something larger than their own desires, entrusted with the sacred duty of being heaven's answer in human form. The gravity of such a calling cannot be overstated, for it means that words spoken casually may be the very balm another has been waiting for, that a gesture performed in passing may be the very signal of mercy. That presence itself may carry a weight of consolation or courage far beyond what the bearer intended. And this responsibility does not rest lightly on the heart once the truth of it is glimpsed, for it awakens in us the awareness that every choice we make, every step we take, is woven into another's tapestry, and our faithfulness or neglect may ripple outward with eternal consequence. To be sent as a gift is not like the giving of a possession that, once handed over, absolves the giver of care. No, it is more like the entrusting of a living flame, carried tenderly in the cupped hands of one traveler and delivered to the hearth of another. The flame must be shielded from the winds, nourished with fuel, preserved with vigilance. So too, the one sent to another must guard the flame of their own character, for the gift they bring is inseparable from the vessel they are. If the vessel is marred by bitterness, if the flame is choked by neglect, then the gift may falter in its delivery, and what was meant to be light may cast only shadow. Herein lies the sobering truth: to be chosen is not only to be honored, but to be held accountable for the stewardship of one's own soul. For it is through that stewardship that the gift to another is conveyed. The weight of responsibility also reveals itself in the silent spaces where no witness applauds and no companion affirms. For often the chosen are called to carry burdens alone before they may offer comfort to another. The midnight wrestling, the silent tears, the long endurance in seasons of obscurity. These are not wasted, for they temper the soul into the very vessel capable of bearing heaven's answer. It is a paradox beyond human invention, that the sufferings we would gladly avoid are often the very means by which we are prepared to be gifts of healing. One who has never known loneliness cannot truly be sent to soothe the lonely. One who has never carried sorrow cannot truly be sent to console the sorrowful. One who has never tasted loss cannot truly be sent to strengthen the bereaved. Thus the chosen bear not only the joy of being sent, but the crucible of preparation. And in this crucible the weight of responsibility presses most fiercely. But let us not imagine that this weight is crushing in the manner of despair. It is heavy, yes, but it is also noble, like the armor fitted to a knight, or the mantle laid upon a prophet. It is weight that bestows dignity even as it demands endurance. And though at times it feels unbearable, it is borne not in our strength, but in the strength of the one who sends us. Here lies another paradox. That responsibility is never carried alone, for the very act of being chosen carries with it the promise of sustaining grace. We are not flung into the world with a burden too great for our frail shoulders. Rather, we are yoked to a strength beyond our own, a strength that makes the burden not light in the sense of triviality, but light in the sense of bearable, purposeful, and redemptive. There is also the responsibility of faithfulness in the small things. For heaven's gifts are rarely wrapped in grandeur, but often in the smallest acts of daily fidelity. A word of patience instead of irritation, a gesture of kindness instead of indifference, a moment of listening instead of distraction. These are the coins with which the treasure of responsibility is spent. The one who has been sent cannot dismiss such moments as beneath notice, for they may be the very appointments by which heaven's purpose is fulfilled. And though the world may never record them, though history's chronicles may never note them, yet in the ledger of eternity they shine brighter than crowns or conquests. The chosen must therefore cultivate the discipline of seeing the invisible significance of small acts, knowing that in heaven's economy, nothing is wasted, nothing is insignificant, nothing is beyond the reach of grace. Responsibility also implies perseverance. To be sent as a gift to another is not always to be welcomed or understood. There will be times when the one to whom you are sent does not recognize the gift, perhaps even resists it, mistaking the hand of heaven for intrusion. There will be seasons when the path of service feels thankless, when your presence seems unnoticed, when your efforts appear fruitless. And yet the chosen must endure, for their calling is not to secure recognition, but to remain faithful. The seed may be planted in silence and may not sprout until long after the sower has gone, but still it must be planted. This endurance is the mark of true responsibility, the willingness to bear the weariness of obscurity for the sake of another's unseen future. Nor should we forget that the responsibility of being a gift is double-edged. It requires not only giving but also restraint. There are times when being sent does not mean rushing to solve, to fix, or to impose, but rather to wait, to listen, to allow space for the other to unfold. Responsibility is not a license for domination, but a call to humility, to recognize that being heaven's instrument does not make one heaven itself. The chosen must learn to discern the delicate balance between speaking and silence, between action and patience, between leading and simply accompanying. This discernment is part of the sacred weight, for without it, the gift risks becoming a burden, and the answer risks becoming a noise. Yet even with all its solemnity, the weight of responsibility is also a weight of joy. For to know that one's life has been appointed as a conduit of blessing is to be freed from the tyranny of aimlessness. The chosen need not wander in despair, wondering if their days are wasted, For even the smallest step is laden with meaning when walked in obedience to the call. This joy does not erase the difficulty, but it transforms it, as a miner who labors in darkness finds strength in the knowledge that every strike of the pick is bringing forth hidden treasure. The responsibility itself becomes a source of dignity, for it testifies that heaven has entrusted something precious to human hands, that eternity has stooped to make use of time, that the infinite has seen fit to clothe itself in the frail garments of our daily lives. This is the wonder of responsibility, that it elevates even the most ordinary actions into the realm of the sacred. The chosen may sweep a floor, tend a wound, write a letter, or simply sit in silence beside another, and in these acts heaven's purpose is fulfilled. The weight is not in the grandeur of the act, but in the significance of the appointment. To be sent is to live every moment with the awareness that you are never merely doing something. You are always bearing something, always carrying a treasure in an earthen vessel, always standing in the tension between fragility and glory. And if this awareness makes you tremble, then it has done its work, for trembling is the appropriate posture of those who realize they are touching mysteries too vast for comprehension, yet too real to ignore. When one is sent as heaven's answer to another soul, there is a mingling of joy and sorrow that cannot be separated, as though the two were threads woven together in the same garment, each giving depth to the other, each making the cloth strong enough to endure the wear of time. To be the one through whom another finds light, or comfort, or hope, is a joy so radiant that words can scarcely carry its weight. Yet to feel the ache of their burden, to step into their grief, to be marked by their wounds as though they were your own, is a sorrow equally profound. And these two realities, joy and sorrow, do not alternate like day and night, but dwell side by side, as dawn and twilight mingle in a single sky. To be heaven's answer is to live always within this tension, rejoicing in the honor of being chosen, and yet aching beneath the cost of bearing another's need. The joy lies first in the wonder of participation. To know that your life has been made an instrument of grace, that your presence has become a balm, that your words have become a doorway through which hope enters another's heart. This is joy beyond calculation. It is the joy of a candle that discovers it was lit not for its own warmth alone, but to kindle another flame. The joy of a river that realizes it flows not into emptiness, but into the thirst of fields that spring into bloom. When we see another lifted, healed, or comforted through what we have given, there rises within us a gladness that no earthly achievement can rival. For it is the gladness of aligning with the eternal, of being caught up in a purpose larger than ourselves. This joy is not the fleeting thrill of recognition or praise, but the deep gladness of knowing that life has not been lived in vain, that our days have touched eternity in the form of another human soul. Yet woven inseparably with this joy is sorrow. For to be heaven's answer is also to share in the brokenness that necessitated the answer in the first place. To comfort the grieving is to enter into grief with them. To strengthen the weary is to taste something of their weariness. To stand with the lonely is to carry some shadow of their loneliness. The chosen do not merely deliver hope like a parcel left at the doorstep. They step into the house of another's suffering, breathing its air, feeling its weight, and in so doing, they are marked by it. This is sorrow not in the sense of despair, but in the sense of compassion so deep that it cannot remain untouched. Indeed, the very word, compassion, means to suffer with, and to be heaven's answer is to consent to this witness, to allow one's heart to be pierced in order that another might be healed. This mingling of joy and sorrow reflects the very nature of love, for love is never one without the other. To love truly is to rejoice in the beloved's flourishing, and yet to ache in their wounds, to delight in their presence, and yet to mourn their absence, to celebrate their victories, and yet to bear their defeats. The one who is sent cannot hold back, cannot remain aloof, cannot keep their heart unscathed, for the very act of being an answer requires that the heart be open, and an open heart is both the vessel of joy and the target of pain. The chosen are not shielded from sorrow. They are plunged into it so that their joy may not be shallow, so that their comfort may not be hollow, so that their companionship may not be a mere gesture, but a living testimony of love that costs something real. And perhaps this is why heaven entrusts this calling not to the proud, but to the humble. For only those willing to embrace both joy and sorrow without demanding one and rejecting the other can bear the full weight of being an answer. The proud seek only the joy, desiring to be celebrated as saviors, but they shrink from the sorrow that makes the gift authentic. The chosen, however, accept both, knowing that the sorrow is itself part of the joy, that the tears shed alongside another are not wasted, but are themselves the water that nourishes the roots of hope. In this mingling of joy and sorrow, there is also the mystery of transformation, for the one who is sent is changed as much as the one who receives. To carry another's burden, even for a time, is to grow stronger. To feel another's grief is to deepen in compassion. To rejoice in another's healing is to be healed in one's own wounds. Thus the chosen are not only answers but also recipients, not only givers but receivers of grace, for in the very act of being sent they discover that heaven is answering their own hidden cries as well. The sorrow enlarges the heart, the joy fills it, and in the interplay of both the soul is refined into something it could never have become alone. But we must not imagine that this mingling is tidy or easily borne. There are times when the sorrow feels overwhelming, when the weight of another's suffering presses so heavily that the joy seems eclipsed. The chosen may weep in secret, may cry out in confusion, may feel the loneliness of carrying a burden unseen by others. Yet even in these moments, joy is not absent, it lies hidden like embers beneath the ash, waiting to flare again when the wind of grace passes over. And conversely, there are moments of such radiant joy that sorrow seems far away. Yet it is never wholly gone, for the memory of suffering lingers, reminding us of the cost of the joy we now celebrate. This is not a defect but a design, for it ensures that our joy does not grow complacent and our sorrow does not collapse into despair. The two balance one another, making of our hearts instruments capable of sounding the full music of love. To be heaven's answer is also to live with the awareness that joy and sorrow are not ours to hoard, but to share. When we rejoice not for ourselves alone, but for the one to whom we were sent. And when we sorrow not in isolation, but in solidarity. This sharedness is itself part of the answer, for the human heart longs not only for solutions, but for presence, not only for relief, but for fellowship. Joy that is kept to oneself shrivels, and sorrow that is borne alone crushes, but when joy is shared it multiplies, and when sorrow is shared it diminishes in its power to destroy. The chosen therefore embody this sharing, becoming the living proof that no one need walk alone, that heaven has seen, has cared, has provided companionship in the very form of another human life. Consider the strange beauty of this mingling when seen across the span of years. There are those who can look back and say, at my lowest, someone was sent to me, and though they could not erase my pain, their presence made it bearable. And there are others who can say, I was sent, and though it cost me tears, the joy of seeing another rise was worth all the sorrow. These testimonies are the quiet miracles that sustain the world, the unseen foundations upon which hope continues to be built generation after generation. And if heaven entrusted such work to angels alone, it would remain too distant, too unearthly. But by entrusting it to human beings, frail and flawed, heaven ensures that the joy and sorrow are both real, both tangible, both credible to the human heart. This mingling also points us forward, for it is a shadow of a greater reality to come. When sorrow itself shall be transfigured into joy, when the tears shed in compassion shall be remembered as the seeds of everlasting gladness. To be heaven's answer now is to live in the tension of the in-between, bearing both joy and sorrow as companions, knowing that neither is wasted, that both are part of a larger story whose ending has not yet been revealed. The chosen walk in hope, for they know that even the deepest sorrow is not the final word, and the highest joy is but a foretaste of what is yet to come. And so they live faithfully in the present, accepting both joy and sorrow as gifts. For in both they are united to the heart of the one who sends them, the heart that rejoices over creation and weeps over its wounds, the heart that holds both laughter and lament in perfect harmony.